The sun still hung low over the lake when the Grand Hotel Syros hosted the event of the year. The wedding guests filled the light-flooded hall. White roses bloomed everywhere, and the sound of clinking champagne glasses mixed with lively laughter in the air. Guests in festive attire strolled between tables, the golden light of early evening reflected on the water. It was the day Hannah Lorenz and Marcus Brenner had worked toward for so long. Two families whose names carried weight in the small town were joining, at least, so it seemed. For Hannah, the young bride with the open laugh and a penchant for small rebellions, it was a celebration against expectations, instead of stiff tradition. She chose color, music, and friends rarely seen at such events. Marcus, the groom, was the epitome of charm. A young entrepreneur, successful, eloquent, with a confident smile that left few women in the room indifferent and impressed quite a few men as well. At his side was his father, Dr. Karl Brenner, a respected doctor in the city who knew every face. Yet behind the façade of friendly small talk, there was always a hint of absence in Karl Brenner, a constant trace in his pale features, as if he were a guest in his own life. When the bridal couple took to the dance floor, all eyes were on them. Hannah laughed, spun around, kissed Marcus as if nothing else existed in that moment. The guests applauded, some struggling with tears of emotion. On the edge of the hall stood Lotte Lorenz, the bride's older sister. She watched everything closely, too closely. Hannah sometimes thought. Lotte was the rock of the family, always one step ahead, yet even she smiled now as the music swelled. The evening gained momentum. There was eating, drinking, laughter. Speeches were made, some too long, others surprisingly moving. Dr. Karl Brenner raised his glass to the couple, his voice calm, but with a slight tremor. To a life full of happiness, mutual respect, and trust, he said, and his gaze lingered on Hannah longer than necessary. The bride met his eyes for a moment, then looked away, embarrassed. The band played the first bars of an old jazz standard as Marcus's phone vibrated. He glanced at the display, his smile faded briefly. He quickly typed out a message, put the phone away, but Lotte, approaching from the bar with a sharp gaze, noticed. "Everything okay?" she asked casually. "Of course," Marcus muttered, turning back to the dance floor. In the background, Eva Summer appeared slim, dark-haired, in a simple blue dress. She moved inconspicuously, but the few times Marcus's and Ava's eyes met, there was a flicker between them. Lotte noticed, filed it away. By midnight, the celebration had broken into smaller groups. Some guests sat on the terrace smoking, others continued to dance in the hall, while the older guests discreetly withdrew. Hannah, euphoric and exhausted at once, said goodbye to Lotte. "Promise me you're happy," Lotte whispered as she hugged her sister. Hannah grinned. "Tonight I am, I promise." By then, Marcus had already disappeared. Few guests thought they'd seen him outside talking with his father, who seemed unusually tense. Later that night, Hannah and Marcus withdrew to the honeymoon suite. The room was decorated with roses, champagne, and chocolates sat on the table. Marcus seemed agitated, his answers growing shorter. "Is everything okay?" Hannah asked. "Just the day. So many people, all the excitement," he dodged. Hannah shrugged, poured herself a glass of champagne, kicked off her shoes. She laughed, kissed him, then disappeared into the bathroom. When she returned, Marcus was sitting by the window staring into the night. "I'll be there in a minute," he said. Hannah shrugged, lay down on the bed, and fell asleep within minutes, the last time anyone saw her alive. The next morning, chaos reigned at the hotel. The housekeepers found the suite locked, opened it after long knocking with a spare key. The sight ended all hope. Hannah lay lifeless on the bed, her face pale, lips blue. The scent of almonds hung in the air. A half-emptied champagne glass on the nightstand, next to a bitten chocolate. Marcus was no longer in the room. The window was open, his phone lay on the floor. No one had seen him since the early morning hours. The hotel became a crime scene. Police and forensics arrived, while guests whispered in the hallway, caught between shock and curiosity. Lotte Lorenz did not cry. She sat at the edge of the corridor, staring at the floor, hands clenched into fists. Inspector Reuter took over the case. As he entered the honeymoon suite, immediately smelled bitter almonds, a sign of hydrogen cyanide, commonly found in poisons like cyanide. The emergency doctor confirmed a short time later. Hannah had been poisoned, presumably around 2 in the morning. There was no trace of Marcus in the room. A Polaroid photo lay on the desk. Hannah in her wedding dress, laughing, holding the camera herself. On the back now, "Our life begins." Reuter sealed off the hotel, began initial interviews. The guests were shocked, many in disbelief. Marcus's absence was particularly striking. Lot Lorenz pressed the investigators to search the lake and surrounding woods. She was convinced. If Marcus didn't kill her, he's either in danger himself, now, or on the run. Dr. Karl Brenner was questioned by Voss. He appeared composed, almost a calm. "My son has no enemies. He's a good person. I know how it looks, but you'll see, it wasn't him." Voss studied him intently. "And you? Where were you after midnight?" "I went back to my room after the celebration. The staff can confirm that." Meanwhile, forensics found a second champagne glass in the bathroom. Traces of lipstick on the rim, but no fingerprints except Hannah's. A small bottle of liqueur was missing from the minibar. The staff reported that only Marcus had entered the suite after midnight. Eva Summer, the affair was intercepted by Lot in the hotel hallway. "Do you know what happened?" she asked. Eva was pale, eyes red. "I swear, I didn't do anything. Marcus told me weeks ago it was over because of Hannah. But we were still in contact." Lot passed on this information. Reuter and Voss withdrew for the first case meeting. Summary of the first hours. Cause of death: poisoning by cyanide. Presumably at night. Marcus Brenner missing. Affair with Eva Summer confirmed. Motive of jealousy present. Groom's father conspicuously calm. Lot Lorenz driving the investigation, highly observant. Guests shocked, but no clear evidence of strangers at the hotel. Evidence in the room: 2 glasses. 1 chocolate, opened minibar. Polaroid photo. Reuter suspected that, behind the facade of the perfect wedding, old wounds, hidden desires, and destructive passions lurked. The happiest day had turned into a nightmare and everyone was trapped within it. The day after the wedding began with a heavy air at the Ciro's Hotel. Outside, the summer light made the lake glitter, but inside, everything was cloaked in a bell of silence and shock. Inspector Martin Reuter had barely interrupted the investigation during the night. The bride's death was too shocking. The pressure on the team enormous. In the small town, word of the tragedy spread quickly. The press was already at the entrance. The wedding guests, tired and shaken, some still in formal wear. Others already in everyday clothes were questioned in the breakfast room. Most could hardly imagine that anyone from their circle would be capable of such an act. Yet beneath the folds of grief and dismay, Reuter sensed the first cracks. Glances exchanged, half-sentences left unfinished, questions hanging in the air. Lot Lorenz, the sister of the deceased, sat alone at a table, clutching a cup of coffee. She had barely slept, her face pale, her eyes red. Voss was the first to sit with her. "You knew your sister best? Did you notice anything unusual in the past few days?" Lot thought for a long time. She was happy. "I really think so." But she was also nervous. "And yesterday evening Marcus was strange to her." Voss took a note. "What do you mean?" "He was distant. Kept going to his phone. Avoided her." She laughed. "But I know her, that was just an act." "And his father? Was there any conflict between the Brenners and your family?" Lot shook her head. "No, rather the opposite. Mr. Brenner actually paid unusual attention to Hannah. Almost intrusively sometimes." Meanwhile, Reuter was questioning Marcus's friends. Some had known him since childhood and swore by his reliability. But one, Thomas, said hesitantly, Marcus had been jittery for weeks, stressed. "I thought it was just the wedding, but now I'm not so sure." A turning point came when police analyzed the groom's phone. Though the screen was cracked, the message history could be reconstructed. In the days before the wedding, Marcus had exchanged intense messages with Eva Summer, first loving, then abruptly cold. In one final, unsent message to Eva, he wrote, "I'm sorry I can't keep pretending everything is fine. Today is Hannah's day. I hope you understand." Eva was called into one of the small salons. The investigators asked for discretion. "When did you last speak with Marcus?" Eva pressed her lips together. "Yesterday, late afternoon. We saw each other briefly outside, in the park behind the hotel. It was goodbye, no threats, no fight. I just wanted to see him one more time before... She broke off. Reuter showed her the last message. Eva cried silently. I never wanted this to happen. Meanwhile, forensics discovered an empty pill pack in the bridal suite trash can, no name. But the blister pack still had remnants of a label. Potassium cyanide, dangerous poison, for laboratory use only. The police checked all staff and guests who might have access to chemicals or labs. Dr. Carl Brenner, as a doctor, potentially had access to pharmaceutical supplies. Marcus himself had once led the school chemistry club for a year. Later that morning, Marcus Brenner was finally found not dead. Not fleeing, but sleeping, utterly exhausted, in a boathouse on the hotel grounds. His clothes were rumpled, his face troubled. When police woke him, he was confused. Where am I? What happened? Reuter and Voss asked him the worst question. Do you know your wife is dead? Marcus collapsed. No, that can't be. I was just outside. I wanted to think. Must have fallen asleep. His alibi was weak, but the shock seemed real. Investigators brought Marcus to the station. There, in the bare interview room, the real ordeal began. Did you have an argument with your wife? Reuter asked. Marcus nodded, tears in his eyes. We fought. Yes. I told her about Eva. I couldn't keep lying. She was calm at first, then very hurt. I begged her to believe that I wanted a new start. After the argument, did you go to the boathouse? Marcus thought. Yes. We had champagne. Then I left. I thought she'd go to sleep. I couldn't go back in the champagne. I opened it 2 glasses. But I barely drank. Hannah liked the minibar champagne. I don't remember much. Who else could have had access to the room? Marcus shrugged helplessly. Anyone with a room card? Dad visited us in the evening, just briefly. Oh. The investigators checked the data from the electronic door locks. It turned out, at 1:34 a.m., the bridal suite was open with Dr. Carl Brenner's card. He had always had a key to his son's rooms, a relic of a family history, always intertwined with control and protection. Reuter and Voss confronted Carl Brenner. Dr. Brenner, you were in your son's room after midnight. Why? The doctor smiled thinly. I just wanted to see if everything was all right. Had a bad feeling, that's all. And the potassium cyanide. That I can't explain. I never handled it. But as a doctor, you're familiar with such substances, of course. But that's not evidence. Speaking with the staff, it became apparent that Dr. Brenner had been unusually nervous that night. A waitress recalled. He came to the bar around 2 in the morning and asked for a whiskey. That was strange at that hour. Another guest said they'd seen him by the lake shore alone, seemingly lost in thought. Eva Summer was questioned again. She confirmed sending Marcus a desperate message that night. No reply. She insisted. I didn't hurt anyone. I knew it was over. But I would never have. Not Hannah. Lot Lorenz took the investigators aside. You must have spoken with my sister before the wedding. She seemed troubled. I think she was afraid, but not of Marcus. Of someone else. Maybe she sensed something. Reuter decided to review the hotel video footage. The recordings showed Carl Brenner entering the hallway around 1:30 a.m., heading toward his son's room, hesitating, then entering. About 15 minutes later, he left the room again. There was no other movement near the room in that time. The autopsy of Hannah's body found no evidence of external violence. Everything pointed to poisoning. In her stomach, there was champagne, chocolate, and traces of the poison. Further examination of the glass revealed, besides Hannah's fingerprints, there was a second print, too faint for immediate identification. The investigators questioned the guests again. Some recalled a moment when Dr. Brenner spoke with Hannah at the edge of the celebration, a conversation apparently more intense than others. Out. Confirmed this. He hugged her like a father, but Hannah seemed uncomfortable, I think. Marcus remained a suspect. The affair with Eva and the proven argument on their wedding night gave sufficient motive. Yet the longer Reuter watched the family, the more he sensed. There was a deeper, more hidden story. Carl Brenner, always controlled, avoided every personal question. He was always present where control was needed. Perhaps Reuter began to suspect control itself was the real motive. Toward evening, an anonymous tip reached the police. Love doesn't end at the altar. Look for the one who never got what he desired. For Reuter, it was clear. The web of feelings and dependencies was tighter than anyone had first assumed. Marcus remained at the center of the investigation, but his father's shadow grew larger with every hour. Meanwhile, the wedding party was falling apart. Guests were leaving, others lingered, as if they could somehow hold off the shock. Lorenz stayed, mourning her sister and searching for answers. At the lake's edge, in the last light of the day, Dr. Karl Brenner stared quietly at the water as if he wanted to drown something there that had never learned to swim. The day after Marcus was found in the boathouse began gray. A fine rain had set in, shrouding the Ciro's Hotel in a melancholic veil. A few boats rocked at the jetty, seagulls circled over the lake. The police, discreet but present, moved through the hotel corridors. Everywhere smelled of cleaning agents and wilting roses. Inspector Reuter and Chief Inspector Voss sat down with their morning coffee in the corner of the breakfast room, from where they could observe the guests. Lorenz hadn't slept all night. Her features had grown even harder. Marcus, the groom, was led in by an officer. He was still in his wedding suit and shirt, collar open, hands restless. The questioning began again. This time, Marcus was less distraught, but more deeply shaken. The full extent of suspicion seemed to be slowly dawning on him. The groom's interrogation. Marcus, what happened after you last saw Hannah? Reuter asked gently, but directly. Marcus breathed heavily. We argued, yes. I told her about Eva, about everything. I wanted to be honest. That was my fault. She yelled at me, wanted me to leave, said she needed space. Went out. At first I wanted to clear my head by the water, then I somehow ended up in the boathouse. I lay down and, I don't know, I just wanted to give her some time. Did you see anyone approach the room? No. It was all quiet. The hallway was empty when I left. I didn't hear any noise. Voss joined in. You had a fight. Your wife is dead, poisoned. Your fingerprint is on the glass. Your affair is known. Why should we believe you had nothing to do with it? Marcus looked desperately between the investigators. I didn't kill Hannah. I love her. I made mistakes, but I'd never hurt her. Please, you have to believe me. The conversation was interrupted as the lab sent new results. The prints on the glass matched Hannah and a male person, not Marcus, but Dr. Karl Brenner. A new, unexpected finding. The affair is explosive. Meanwhile, Eva Summer was questioned again. She was devastated, having spent the night in a guest room at the hotel. Marcus said he wanted to be honest with Hannah. I didn't want any of this. I stepped back because I knew it was wrong. She paused for a moment. I didn't hurt anyone. I was outside briefly around midnight, left the party, wanted to go to the bus stop, but then turned back and saw Mr. Brenner outside, walking alone toward the lake. Reuter noted that both Marcus and Eva independently confirmed that Dr. Karl Brenner was out and about at night. The time frames matched suspiciously well. Dr. Karl Brenner, under pressure. The investigators summoned the father for questioning. Dr. Brenner appeared as composed as ever. Glasses polished, jacket immaculate. He greeted the investigators politely, but his eyes looked dull. You're aware your card was used to access the bridal suite that night? Yes. I wanted to check on the children. Father's habit. I wasn't in there long. Hannah was asleep. Marcus wasn't there. And the glass? Your print was found? I removed an empty glass from the bathroom. Just wanted to tidy up. I didn't do anything. Nothing at all. What was your relationship with Hannah? The doctor was silent for a long time, then shrugged. She was a wonderful person. She changed Marcus for the better. But Lorenz, the bride's sister, had her own observations. She had been in the hallway at night and heard voices. She reported to Reuter that she heard Karl Brenner and Hannah quietly arguing words like "too close" and "please leave me alone." She hadn't dared to listen further. The hidden past. While going through Hannah's personal belongings, investigators found an old letter hidden in her suitcase, handwritten, full of pathos. The first lines, Hannah, you are the light in my life. I know I'm too old, too close to your happiness, but I can't help but love you. You have to tell Marcus everything, or I will. The signature was cryptic, a simple K. Lot recognized the handwriting as Dr. Karl Brenner's. When Reuter confronted him with the letter, the doctor grew very quiet. I only wanted the best for her. She was something special, but I never did anything. Investigators learned from a hotel staff member that Dr. Brenner had long admired Hanahi, was noticeably attentive during visits for Marcus. He cared about her health, gave small gifts. In the weeks before the wedding, he'd met alone with Hannah several times. The last conversation, according to the staff, was unusually tense. The investigation narrows. Meanwhile, the investigation into the source of the poison continued. At the hospital where Dr. Brenner was chief physician, a vial of potassium cyanide was found, missing, discovered only the morning after the wedding. There was a record showing Dr. Brenner had accessed the pharmacy late at night. In the doctor's hotel room, more evidence was found. A second pair of disposable gloves and a small, nearly empty medicine bottle. On it, traces of cyanide. The fingerprints had been wiped, but a strand of hair blonde, like Hannah's, was also found. Lot's own investigation, Lot couldn't sleep. She replayed the conversation with Hannah from the afternoon before the wedding. I feel like someone is getting too close to me. Marcus is so distant, and Karl, sometimes he scares me the way he looks at me. But that's crazy, right? Hannah had confided. Lot had reassured her. But now she knew. Her sister had been afraid. Lot told Reuter everything. For him, the picture grew clearer. Marcus was responsible for the marital crisis, Eva for emotional turmoil. But the real drama, the obsessive love, came from the previous generation. The showdown. Late in the evening, Reuter summoned Karl Brenner for one final talk. He confronted him with everything: the letter, the access to the hospital pharmacy, the gloves, the hair. Dr. Brenner, you loved Hannah but not like a father-in-law. When she rejected you, you acted. The doctor looked at Reuter for a long time, and his facade crumbled. I didn't want to hurt her. She was kind, so different from the others. I was alone. Marcus never understood me. Hannah was the light in this damned life. I only wanted to talk, but she rejected me. She told me to stop following her, that she loved Marcus. Then, I lost control. I just wanted her to listen. When she asked me to leave, I got angry. In a moment, he paused, hands shaking. I put the poison in her glass. I thought she would. Never notice. I just did it. Afterwards, I left, stared at the lake. I was sure no one would ever find out. Voss stood motionless. Reuter was silent. At last, Dr. Karl Brenner was taken into custody. The final hours, Lot, who had heard everything from the doorway, finally wept. Marcus sat, collapsed on a bench in the hallway. Eva left the hotel in silence. Reuter looked out at the lake. The rain had stopped. A murder had happened in the night, born of obsession and wounded love, hidden beneath the golden glow of a wedding. The next morning, Dr. Brenner was led away. The press was already waiting. The hotel slowly returned to normal. Only the Lorenz family stood together in silence. Marcus, exonerated but broken, sat alone in the garden.
Oh.
No one spoke of the perfect wedding anymore. But Inspector Reuter knew. There is no fairy tale ending when the poison of the past is stronger than any promise. The news of the confession spread quickly, first among the wedding guests, then throughout the whole town. At the Ciro's Hotel, a strange emptiness lingered. The police had finished their work. The crime scene was released. But no one wanted to remain in the ballroom that had become the stage for a tragedy. Inspector Martin Reuter stayed one more day to tie up the last loose ends. In the room where Hannah had died, the scent of roses still hung heavily in the air. He replayed the events of that final night over and over. So much had glittered on the surface, yet underneath, everything had been rotten. At headquarters, Chief Inspector Voss presented the file to the prosecutor. Cyanide from the hospital pharmacy. The gloves, the hair, the letter, the incriminating fingerprints. Dr. Karl Brenner's confession completed the circle, driven by unrequited love and obsession. He had put the poison in Hannah's glass on her wedding night. Her refusal to reciprocate his feelings had triggered in him a blend of rage, sorrow, and self-pity, a fatal mix that meant the downfall of the entire family. The morning after Marcus Brenner, cleared of all guilt, was nevertheless a broken man. In his family home, there was only silence. The press camped outside, friends avoided contact. He left the hotel quietly, accompanied only by his mother-in-law and Lot. No one said a word. Eva Summer had already left, her pain mixed with guilt and shame. She knew that, for Marcus, she would never be more than a shadow from a life that could never return. Lot Lorenz, the sister of the deceased, remained in town for several more days. She took care of her mother, managed the formalities, comforted friends, and searched for explanations where there were none. In the evenings, she often sat by the lake, gazing out over the water, thinking of Hannah, her joy, her insecurities, her courage. "I won't forget you," she whispered into the silence. The conversation with the perpetrator Reuter visited Dr. Karl Brenner one last time in pre-trial detention. The once highly respected doctor seemed to have aged years in just a few days. His hands were steady, his gaze clear, but the pain in his eyes was undeniable. "I spent my whole life pretending I could control what I felt," Brenner said quietly. "But feelings can't be tamed or suppressed. I just didn't want to be alone." Reuter was silent. "You didn't just take one life. You destroyed everyone who loved Hannah." Brenner nodded. "I know, and I will never find forgiveness." Farewell and new beginnings. The funeral took place in a small circle. The white funeral drape on Hannah's coffin felt like a final greeting to a life that had promised so much. The remaining guests bowed their heads. Reuter stood at the edge watching as Marcus placed a rose on the grave and then walked away in silence. At the hotel, the staff packed away the last remnants of the celebration. They spoke quietly, sharing stories of Hannah's laughter, her kindness. Somehow they tried to come to terms with what had happened. In the evening, Reuter and Voss met by the lakeshore. The setting sun reflected on the water. "Do you think Marcus will ever be able to start over?" Voss asked. Reuter shrugged. "Everyone carries their wounds. But sometimes, something new grows from pain. You just have to endure long enough for life to change again." They were silent. Another case would come. New puzzles, new sorrow, but this bloody wedding would remain in their memories. What remains as the sun finally disappeared below the horizon, Reuter knew. Appearances are often most deceiving where happiness seems greatest. In the end, there is always a shadow of darkness that no one wants to see until it's too late.